How we doing, Jets fans? I'm Glenn Naughton with Jet Nation Radio, JetNation.com. Be sure to log on to JetNation.com where you can register and become a part of the most active Jets message board on the web to talk about the embarrassing New York Jets dropping a 27-6 stinker to the San Diego Chargers. Offensively, complete disaster, up and down, top to bottom. Nobody was good. Robert Saleh said it after the game. He said it several times. He cited the fumbles, the penalties, the boneheaded mistakes, guys out of position. The Jets have a problem, folks. This offense isn't getting better. We hoped it would. We hoped that the fact that they were moving the ball consistently between the 20s and getting into the red zone. They weren't scoring from the red zone, but you thought, okay, as long as you keep doing it, as long as you keep getting there, eventually you're gonna start punching it in, and that's just not happening. Zach Wilson was not good tonight. He was better than the numbers indicate, but he still wasn't very good. I still stand by what I've been saying, which is that Zach has gotten better, but that still isn't good enough. Um, I have remained optimistic that if he's not done getting better, he may eventually get to the point where he's good enough. But right now he's not. When you're winning, you can get away with playing the way he has. And again, the support he got tonight, or the lack thereof. Like, the Jets have some problems, right? Like Zach Wilson, we can talk about how he's got to get better. But they have guys who are literally just dead weight on this roster. And they combine to make over $20 million a year. You look at the guys on this roster right now who just are of no use. Dalvin Cook, Randall Cobb, uh, Billy Turner, Laken Tomlinson to a degree, Alan Lazard. Like, this is over $20 million in guys who really don't bring anything to the table. Defense played well at the same time. These teams are outright disrespecting us. They play ultra conservative offense because they know Zach can't score. Yeah, they don't have to try anything crazy, but I do think the Jets defense really is that good. The Jets defense tonight, folks, again, like the number would you think, 27-6. The Jets defense finally got it handed to them. No, they didn't. Early punt return for touchdown, and then a late fumble recovery that the Chargers ran back to the 2-yard line. That was 14 of the 27 points right there. Jets defense was actually fantastic. Justin Herbert on the day, 16 out of 30 for 136 yards and no touchdowns. That is an elite passer, and the Jets just completely dominated. But let's face it, it doesn't matter if you go out and lose the game. And this is something Robert Saleh has to worry about. Again, it's one loss. You're playing the Raiders next. You go out there, if you beat the Raiders, then everyone's back on track, and you kind of keep pressing forward, because the goal right now, right, is what? To stay in the playoff picture, stay in the playoff hunt until Aaron Rodgers gets back. This team's defense is good enough to do that, obviously, but it's a matter of, is the offense going to get it together? And I don't see any reason for optimism in terms of the O-line, with the number of injuries they have. If you've got, I said on our show, myself, Chris Schubert, Dylan Terman, I picked the Jets to win this game earlier today when it was sort of apparent that it was like, all right, Billy Turner's going to play, Max Mitchell's going to play. You've got Bosa, you've got Khalil Mack. I in the forums on JetNation.com, I kind of said, like, this. I'm getting more and more nervous. The closer this game gets, you've got some guys who can get after the passer, and you don't have a lot of guys who can block them. And Joe Tippmann, listen, he's a guy, he's coming back. So it's a matter of, is he rushing back early just to be able to contribute? It's unlikely he's 100%. So you've got a less than 100% Joe Tippmann. You've got Mitchell at right guard, normally plays tackle, playing guard. Not a very good, he does some things well, solid run blocker, good value for where you drafted him. Um, Billy Turner, not a good player. One of the guys that Aaron Rodgers wanted brought in. Um, and Laken Tomlinson's been, he's been better than he was last year, but he's still been bad more often than he's been good, at least in my opinion. So you've got three guys who aren't very good, who really, I mean, Turner, I don't think should even be a backup at this point. But you've got a couple guys who are not starters for a reason. And then you've got a guy who is a starter who's probably coming back from an injury earlier than he would have if not for the fact that they need him that badly in Joe Tipman. So the O line's a disaster. So the closer this got, let's see, Grove, Pete Wilson's what you saw tonight. Defense gave up third down all night. Came up with no turnovers. The O line stinks. We're not going to the playoffs. Yeah, Wilson is what we saw tonight. He's a guy who holds onto the ball too long at times. Robert Saleh talked about that, but I don't. I got to start charting this stuff because it's getting so out of hand. I don't know how many times they went from second and short and third and short to second and long and third and long because of penalties. Total number of drops, I would say at least 6. Somebody said 8. I don't know if there were 8. I would say at least 6 drops. Um, I believe the penalty count last time I looked was 9, and that was sort of mid third quarter. So you get in the neighborhood of 10 penalties and 6 drops. Then and your quarterback is mediocre to begin with. That's just a recipe for not scoring a touchdown. And then what better way to end the game? Zach Wilson throws what should be a touchdown to CJ Uzama, hits him in the chest. I mean, he's falling to these, or he's dropping to the ground to get low to catch it, but it hits him in the chest, bounces off his arm, his leg. He's can't hold on. And then they end the game with a pass to the 1 yard line to Tyler Conklin, and he gets stuffed. But statistically, again, Zach Wilson better than Justin Herbert. As I said, Herbert 16 out of 34 and 36. Zach Wilson, 23 out of 49 for 263. But again, Jets couldn't run the ball. Ran it a little bit better than last week. Brees Hall, 16 for 30. I'm sorry, 16 for 50, 3.1 a clip. Dalvin Cook, 2 for 7. Zach, 2 for 7. Garrett Wilson, 80 yards, 7 for 80. Didn't feel like it. Tyler Conklin, 6 for 66. A few of those came in garbage time. Xavier Gibson, 2 for 32. So we saw him a little bit. Michael Carter had 6 catches, but I feel like 5 of those came on the final couple minutes. Alan Lazard. What are you going to do with him? You can't. You don't have anybody else. I mean, Jason Brownlee. I tweeted this during the game. I was a big Brownlee guy coming out of college. The thing I liked most about him was his ability, was basically incredible hands. Good height, good length, great hands, ability to beat, man to man or double coverage, pulling the ball down, aggressive, attack the football. The opposite of Alan Lazard, essentially. Can he be worse? Let's see. Gotham City Jets. It wasn't Zach's fault tonight. This offense isn't a Super Bowl. Listen, the offense, as Robert Saleh said, the offense was a disaster from top to bottom, but Zach has to be better too. It was fault. Listen, you have 10 penalties and 5, 6, 7, 8 drops. It's most certainly not all on the quarterback. And again, I hate talking about sacks guys take without looking at the all 22. And I got to be honest. I mean, Jesus, I get tired of so many ugly games. I was thinking after the game, I'm like, do I want to watch this all 22? I would love nothing more than just take a pass and not even watch it. But without watching the all 22, you don't know what these sacks were. Was anybody open? Is he just trying to avoid throwing the interception? Because those were his choices, right? And so, I mean, some of them you could throw them away. But when the pressure is on you as quickly as some of those are, by the time the thought of getting rid of it even enters your mind, you're already on your way down. Let's see. Watching Zach's press conference, genuinely feel bad. I like the guy. He's in way over his head. Didn't watch the presser because I came on live. I did. I watched the Saleh presser where he said basically every single thing I expected him to say. Zach, good enough kid. But Zach, basically, here's where Zach Wilson is in his career. He is better than the player he was last year, but he's not good enough that you're going to be able to survive 6 drops, 10 penalties, and a bunch of backup offensive linemen. It's just not going to happen. Um, it's just it it's not going to happen. I don't know how many quarterbacks would be successful in this scheme. You know, you look at the guys they brought in. I mentioned earlier the fact that they've got some dead weight on this roster. A lot of it is the guys Aaron Rodgers wanted brought in, right? Aaron Rodgers wanted Randall Cobb, who is dead weight. He wanted Alan Lazard, who is more bad than good. Okay, let's be fair and not call Lazard dead weight. Okay, Lazard is just more bad than good. He can do some useful things for you, but he will do more things that are bad for you. Cobb is dead weight. Dalvin Cook, who Aaron Rodgers wanted, is dead weight. Billy Turner, who Aaron Rodgers wanted, is dead weight. Nathaniel Hackett, who's Aaron Rodgers' best friend, isn't going anywhere. Might be dead weight. I mean, it's to live through another Hackett is just ridiculous. But yeah, these are guys, and yeah, Peter Yeti says totally agree. Gave us Hackett, Lazard, Cobb, Cook, and four. Yeah, that's that. I'll tell you what, man, the Jets paid a lot. If you look at the guys they brought in to make Aaron Rodgers happy, plus the picks and the money they gave up for Aaron Rodgers, man, they got to win a Super Bowl next year, or it's a huge bust. Uninspiring QB play, lends stuff to teammates. Everybody was bad before the QB play was bad. I mean, everyone was terrible. Yeah, you got to be professionals. It's I mean, listen, I don't believe for 1 second that if Zach Wilson started off hot, that that Billy Turner would have played well. He's just not a good player, and he's playing guys who are very good, Khalil Mack and Bosa and all that. Um, Tip of the captain. Well, again, maybe watch the film, but Mekhi Becton, I don't recall seeing him get abused the way everybody else on the line was. I'm not saying he didn't get beat at any point, but I don't think he got abused that way. Zach Hackett plus O line is listen, it's a damn disaster. I mean, how many times are we going to run it up the middle on first down, Hackett? It looked like the Jets had a little something going when they went up tempo. Something I called before the game. I said one thing the Jets should look at, and Saleh talked about it after the game. He said I felt like we got things going. Um, it's they did have moments. Like I said, he is statistically better than Herbert. How do you maintain optimism? Define optimism. I mean, I'm optimistic that they'll be in some games, they'll win some games, but I don't know that they'll win enough to stay in it and have it make a difference if Rodgers comes back, because that's the goal at this point, right? Like win enough games to be in the playoff hunt with 2 or 3 games to go, and hope that Aaron Rodgers comes back and fixes everything. But I'm not sure they can do that. I'm really not. Dwayne Brown, if he comes back, that's the thing. Dwayne Brown doesn't solve everything, but he might make things a little better. Well, he will actually, because if Brown comes back and that sends Billy Hunter to the bench, you're better. Your offensive line's better when that happens. Saffold, is he going to replace Mitchell next week? And will that be good? We don't really know. This team doesn't have margin of error to survive stuff like this tonight. Just a poor effort, says Chris. How we doing, Chris? Our good friend Chris Schubert. Not sure when you tuned in, Chris, but that's exactly what I said a few minutes ago. I said Zach Wilson is at a point in his career where he's better than he was last year, but if you're going to commit 10 penalties and have 6, 7, 8 drops and give up a ton of sacks, he's not that good. Not a lot of quarterbacks are, but Zach Wilson certainly isn't. And someone said to me earlier, "Oh, so you need them to be perfect for Zach to win?" Not perfect. And then, as I said, there's quite a bit of middle ground between perfect and entirely dysfunctional, and that's what the Jets' offense has been. So Zach Wilson isn't good enough to overcome entirely dysfunctional. Good enough to overcome a couple of drops. He's done that. We've seen him do it. Hell, Alan Lazard has 2, 3 drops every week, and they just won 3 in a row. So he can overcome some stuff, but he's not overcoming 10 penalties and 7 sacks. A couple of them you could say were on him, fine. But again, without the all-22, if he's desperately trying to make a play, like they've got to get yards to get points, and he's waiting for someone to get open and get sacked, what are you going to do? You want him to heave it up into coverage and throw an interception so you can rip him and say, "Oh my God, that idiot threw it into coverage"? Like, you can't have it both ways. And the wide receiver room, I said, I'm trying to remember, Chris, because we were messaging during the game. I said to somebody, can't remember if it was Chris or someone else, that I wasn't sure how much I was going to touch on this during the show. I tweeted about it during the game. And again, I know. Listen, I mean, here are the numbers, folks. Let's let's try to be fair and honest for a second. Having said Zach Wilson was bad, okay, but let's just look at the numbers and see if the numbers match the narrative. Okay, because I keep hearing people say, "What does it matter who we have at wide receiver if the quarterback can't hit anyone? If the quarterback can't hit a target, it doesn't matter who the receivers are. He doesn't see the open target. He can't hit the open target. So what does it matter?" He went 33 for 49 with 5, 6, 7 drops. So really probably on target 38 out of 49 times. Are we going to sit here and say 38 for 49 isn't good and that he's not seeing the field and he doesn't know who his receivers are and he can't be accurate and his every throw is off? 33 out of 40. And again, I get a lot of that's padded. That probably had a drive late in the game where he went 7 for 8. But even before that, like he's on target. Yes, there are frustrating throws. I get that. But you don't think that better receivers would make this team better? And we talked about this ad nauseum during the offseason. I tweeted out, let's see, I thought tonight his internal clock was the worst it's ever. It was bad tonight, Chris. I agree. Says Zach's internal clock was bad tonight. It was not good at all. I mean, he did it. It was probably one of his worst games. Probably his worst game this year. Made a couple of good throws, but not enough to overcome all of this. But the receiver situation, I tweeted this out during the game. The Jets, first of all, let's dispel this myth that DeAndre Hopkins said he would not sign with the Jets. Couple of things there. One, DeAndre Hopkins never said he would not sign with the Jets. Never, ever. Find it. Find me the quote, and get me the link and send it to me now. Put it in the chat. The link of DeAndre Hopkins saying, I will not play for the New York Jets. You won't find it because he didn't say it. He did take part in a silly interview where team names were being thrown at him, and he offered a facial expression to express whether or not he wanted to be there. And he did kind of wince when the guy mentioned the Jets, which would suggest it wasn't his top choice. Okay, that's not the same as saying you wouldn't play somewhere. It's like, I'd be hesitant to play there. After that interview, DeAndre Hopkins said, or not, a list leaked of the teams he would play for because his priority was to play with an elite quarterback. And it was like Baltimore, and it was like 5 or 6 teams, Baltimore, maybe Kansas City, it was like 5 or 6 teams with elite quarterbacks. Fair enough. Where did DeAndre Hopkins sign? Did he sign to play with an elite quarterback? Or did he sign with the place that gave him the best deal in Tennessee with Ryan Tannehill? That's where he landed. So he never said he wouldn't play for the Jets. And the one thing that was leaked in terms of where he would play, he didn't even stick to that. He took the best deal. So had the Jets offered the best deal, and what the Jets should have done, the right move at that time for Joe Douglas and company would have been to cut or trade Corey Davis and sign DeAndre Hopkins. And it was almost a wash. It would have, your salary cap would have, or your cap commitments would have gone up by like 2-3 million. Minimal, negligible increase in your cap to make a significant upgrade at wide receiver. Jets didn't do that. As myself and Chris, as Chris chimed in, the wide receiver room has to be discussed. We both said after the draft, what the hell are the Jets doing here? Some good players, yes. Guys who are going to help a win now team? No. No. A lot of guys who aren't going to see the field a whole lot. And to this point, 2 guys have played. 2 draft picks have played for this team. Carter Warren apparently played 1 snap last week. I missed that. Sorry. Let's go ahead and let's not go overboard with a snap on offense and 2 specials according to PFF. For all intents and purposes, Joe Tippmann has played and Will McDonald's played sparingly. 8 snaps last week. I saw him on the field for 2 today. Maybe he played another 7 or 8. I don't know. But we're talking about a guy who plays fewer than a dozen snaps a week. At edge, where they're loaded. And they didn't pursue DeAndre Hopkins, and they could have had either Jackson Smith and Jigba or Jordan Addison or Zay Flowers or Josh Downs. And then in recent weeks, they could have traded for Hunter Renfrow. I believe it was Brian Costello who the Jets leaked out, like, hey, here's who we did pursue Devontae, we did pursue Mike Evans. We didn't want Hunter Renfrow because we didn't want a slot guy. Why? You need anybody who can line up at receiver and get open. Hunter Renfrow would have been an excellent choice. And people say to me, but Glenn, the Raiders weren't picking up the phone on trade deadline day because they were firing everyone. You could have used Hunter Renfrow 1 week ago, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, a month ago. The fact that you ignored that need and didn't pursue an upgrade doesn't make it okay because the team didn't answer on the day you called. And again, the Jets weren't calling about Renfrow. He wasn't good enough because they have, I know that, excuse me, I know that Xavier Gibson had 2 catches today for 22 yards, which is great, more targets, good for him. But up until today, he had 1 catch for 4 yards, and the Jets didn't need a slot in their minds. Abby says, I bet they bench Zach. Not yet, Abby. It won't happen yet. Another game or two like today, and I could see that happening. Peter, this terrible offense is why I was on the fence about the Rodgers trade. Even with him, it's probably not a good offense. I don't know. But I think with Rodgers, he commands more respect. Teams are going to back off a little. You're going to have a little bit more room to run. That opens up the run game. That makes the pass game. He can do so much more. Let's see. Send me the link. I'm in the car on my way home from the game. Says Dylan. I'll try to, let's see if I can shoot you that link, Dylan. Get you in here. Let's see. JD failed us. Look, JD did. Oh, from Austin Powers. How are we doing, Austin Powers? Listen, this was not a good offseason for Joe Douglas. In many ways, even with the Rodgers trade. People didn't like it at the time, but I said I thought he got fleeced in the Rodgers deal. I thought they gave up too much. I thought they were going to be giving up a 1. But I still, there's no need to rehash that argument. But when you're talking about the fact that guys don't have, or the Packers didn't have another buyer, the Jets gave up too much. But that's water under the bridge. There's no need to get into all that. Let's see if Dylan can join us here in a minute. Putrid garbage. I blame JD for not having a legit backup. Kev, we just finished talking about wide receiver. I said, and I took some heat for this. I said that the Jets, until they added a quality veteran backup, could not be taken seriously as a contender because they might have to go to Zach Wilson. And again, see, I feel like I'm being consistent with Zach Wilson. Like I said, it was a bad idea to have him as your primary backup. I said I didn't want him to see the field at all this year, unless you're talking blowouts and maybe a week 17 if you clinch a playoff spot. But when he played and he looked better, I acknowledge that he looked better. But in saying he looked better, I've also said he can be better and still not good enough. And that's what he's been. So looks like Dylan's gonna hop in here on his way home from the game. Oh, we have a black blurry.
Oh yeah, the picture's not going to be good, but hopefully it sounds good. Can you hear me good?
Yeah, I got you. Go ahead and chime in here, Dylan.
Man, that game is wild. Obviously, you can hear it in my voice. You got to yell for the defense, but you can't yell for this offense anymore. It's so disappointing. I mean, we sat up here last week and talked about Zach Wilson and how he was turning the corner, and it just felt like everything went back the other way tonight, and it was so disappointing. I thought the offensive line looked great. Allen Lazard did many Allen Lazard things, penalties.
You thought the offensive line looked great?
From where I was standing in the stadium for most of the game, the pockets looked okay. Obviously, the sacks were bad. I think at the last point we checked, there was 5 sacks by the Chargers. I think 3 of them were just Zach holding on to the ball too long. I shouldn't say great for the O-line. I should probably say better than expected, given that you had Mitchell at right guard and Turner at right tackle. But no, I think a lot of it was on Zach. A lot of it was on, like you were saying just before, the wide receivers and the lack of depth. I mean, obviously Garrett had his little blemish, but he still ended up with like 80 yards So it was just tough to watch that offense in that stadium with the crowd being so electric for the defense. It was so quiet for the offense.
Yeah, eight sacks for the Chargers. I just looked it up. Um,
Oh, they
I
ended with
thought,
8. Jesus.
yeah. I mean, there were some moments where it looked like they were settling down, but
Hmm.
basically what it looked to me, it looked like the Chargers just, I don't want to say took it easy, but they every time it was third down and they ramped up, they got pressure or sack. That's what they
Hmm.
got it when they needed it. So you kind of look and think, okay, look, they've had a couple of plays here where there hasn't been any pressure. Maybe they're starting to settle in, and then it's 3rd and 3, and then there's a penalty, and it's 3rd and 8, and then boom, then there's a sack, and you're losing
Hmm.
another 7, 8, 9 yards. So yeah, the Chargers ended up with 8 sacks on the day. A couple of them I think were on Zach, but I think, listen, the one Tomlinson gave up was almost comedic. Like Zach
Hmm.
was trying to spin away from the guy sacking him, and it was like a Tomlinson sandwich. Like the guy just drove Tomlinson back and then reached around and grabbed Zach, with Tomlinson still standing there. At least two of the Billy Turner sacks, he just got steamrolled into the pocket and gave up a sack. I think he was the guy on the fumble as well.
Yep.
So to me, the
Yeah.
offensive line was it was, and I said, Dylan, at the top, I said that I picked the Jets to win this game, but as it got closer, and I posted on the forums on JetNation.com, I said that I think I was starting to get more and more nervous as the game approached, and the reality set in that it was going to be Billy Turner. I was even a little bit worried about Becton after the way he played last week, and Joe Tipman, who knows if is he 60%, is he 70%? I'm sure he's not 100%. And Max Mitchell. So I'm thinking Turner's terrible. Mitchell's an all right run blocker, but not great in pass pro. Becton's coming off a really bad game. Tomlinson just has been bad more than he's been good. And how healthy is Joe Tipman? And so I'm not going to say I was picking the Chargers, but like I stuck with my pick. But I just, as the game got closer, I just thought, you know what, this is not going to go well. And it kind of played out the way I felt it would once I realized just how banged up. Like I thought Dwayne Brown might be back, and while he's not great, like Brown Becton is a lot better than Becton Turner. So I thought the tackles would be better,
Hmm.
but they just weren't. So now it's a matter of, do you get Saffold spun up? And next week, is it Becton with Saffold at right guard and Becton at right tackle and Brown at left, at like a slightly better line? But I don't know if it's going to make a difference because they don't have anybody who can get open. They
Yeah.
have Garrett Wilson and a bunch of guys, you know. Um,
And I don't
it's
know how much more the offensive line upgrades will help in the run game because I felt like the run game was doing well enough to, be sustainable throughout the game. It was really just the pass pro issues toward the later half of the game. But yeah, it's really tough. The combination that they had out there today. I don't really believe in Max Mitchell as a guard or a tackle. Um, Me and Dom C were sitting together. Shout out Dom C for getting me the ticket to come to tonight's game. But we were talking about it, and we don't know. Like Dennis Kelly was inactive, but he was a
yeah,
guy that was brought up on the practice squad. So we
yep.
just don't know what's next. And he even said maybe Brown is sitting out an extra week to get reps at right tackle. And I'm like, if that's really what they want to do, I personally would think that they would just move Mackay back, but I don't know. It's really scary what the combinations are going to continue to be for this team because that was starting combination number 5 in game number 8,
Yeah,
and
this is
and
another
next week it's going to be
conversation to
different.
have.
Yeah.
This offseason. I know that I talked about it the other day. I can't remember if it was on Scott Play Like a Jet or on our show because we've gone through so many topics in such a short time. But I feel like every year, people send out these silly tweets that are just unrealistic and say next year every single pick should be offensive line, which is absurd. But I'm at the point now where like I'm not opposed to drafting 3 guys
Right.
and signing a couple more. Like because this if there's one thing we've learned from the Jets over the last couple years, I don't remember the injuries ever being this bad. But they literally need 8 guys who can start and a couple of backups who can be fringe starters because they can't stay on the field. And I think next year, I want to see some Carter Warren. Hopefully he might play this year. Let's not forget him. As bad as they've
Yeah.
been,
Yep.
Let's see. Go through some of these
It
comments
was.
here from the chat. Austin Powers says Zach got sacked 8 times, 1.5 seconds. There were some plays where the pressure was there right away.
Mhm.
Kev says JD and coaches are insulting our defense. Well, I don't think they are because Salah addressed it after the game. I think he knows. He's not going to come out and say it publicly. But he's a defensive coach. Like he's probably just as pissed as those defensive players that they're going out there playing the way they are and coming up short. And let's not forget, we're not quite at the point we were last year where this had gone on for 3, 4, 5 weeks and it was like, dude, you got to do something. Like he can still fall back on the
Right.
fact, guys, we're 4-4, we're in it. We've scored some points. We had a couple of bad weeks. We put up 20 plus against the Chiefs. We put up 20 plus against the Broncos. Like we can get some points on the board. Like he can buy himself a couple of, especially if you win one. Like you go into Oakland, you beat, like this defense is facing a rookie quarterback next week. I don't care if it's 3-0. Like find a way to win.
Right.
And if you can do that, that buys you a little more time. As long as you're winning, nobody cares. It's the losses that are going to make it bad. Justin says Zach's frazzled, doesn't know when to move, doesn't know when to step up, doesn't have. Again, I'm not. As I've said, Zach wasn't good, but it's not. This wasn't one of his 9 for 26 for 30-yard performances. He was 33 out of 49 with a ton of drops. So
he threw 49 passes.
Yeah, but you got to figure he probably threw 9 or 10 in that final drive where he just dinked and dunked it, hit Michael Carter 5 times and Conklin once or twice. And then, of course, the one touchdown that would have been Uzama drops it. And that was the final drop of the day. I think that was the 7th or 8th drop.
Yeah.
Let's see. Media needs to stop talking about Rodgers returning this year when Zach cannot throw a TD. Well, I think that's why the media wants Rodgers back. If they can beat some of the – I mean, we've seen they can beat teams, right? Like we saw them beat the Eagles. They almost beat the Chiefs. So they're certainly good enough to beat the Raiders. And there's some other teams on the schedule they're good enough to beat. They've beaten the Bills once already. So if they – all they got to do is stay in it. And that's why the media is talking about it. Let's see. 30 against Zach Wilson doesn't seem to have natural mental talent for the game. Our backup QB could not even put an extra in a movie. That's and listen, Kevin, you're not going to get me to disagree. Like I said, I've acknowledged Zach's improvement, but I also said in the offseason it would be really. I said it was his biggest fail in the offseason was not adding a legit QB2. I felt like he should have gone after Gardner Minshew or somebody like that, which this team would probably be. I would say this team is probably sitting at about 7-1 with Gardner Minshew at quarterback. I don't want to see Zach Wilson, Tomlinson, Uzama, or Lazard on this roster next year. Yeah, well, I don't think any of us do.
Yeah.
I
Most of those guys are on expiring
Tomlinson's
contracts anyway, so.
What's that?
I think all those guys except for Zach are on expiring contracts anyway.
Yeah, well, Tomlinson,
I guess not Lazard,
him
obviously.
A year. I think he's around. And Lazard just signed a 4-year deal.
Yeah, I mean, Lazard, but I think it's a really 2-year deal that they can get out of after the second year, which I think is always like the Rodgers plan,
Yeah, after the second year, I think they can get rid of. They can. The cap hit is minimal next year.
The thing is that not much is going to change because Rodgers is coming back. So we can yell at the clouds that Lazard can't, catch a ball, and Randall Cobb should probably just be a player coach. But like most likely, Lazard's going to be back in a prominent role next year. They can go get a wide receiver 3. You mentioned it about Xavier Gibson. Like he finally did a wide receiver thing today and caught a pass after running a route. It wasn't like a gadget play.
2 of them. He caught 2 passes today.
I know. It's actually really exciting to
times.
see 82. Yeah, but that's where we're at with wide receiver 3. So they need to attack it for sure. I know Connor Hughes was taking pot shots at Will McDonald during the game, saying JSN should have been the pick. Blah blah blah. I get it.
Yeah, I wouldn't even say that's pot shots. I mean, I addressed that earlier. I said before the draft that JSN should have been the pick. I said on draft day JSN should have been the pick.
Yeah, we sat up there and did the live show, and we're like, "This got to be JSN." Like the board didn't fall with the offensive line with Broderick Jones getting jumped, and we just were like, "All right, well JSN's there. It's got to be him." So
yeah, Peter says, "Can the Jets win 6 more games?" Nice. Say that again. Sorry.
Will McDonald did get a half sack, which was nice.
He did, and I said to someone the other day,
and it was a strip sack.
Game, what's that?
It was a strip sack. Herbert got it back, but he got the ball.
Yeah, that was the one that Michael Clemens should have fallen on.
Yep, yeah. 2 fumbles they should have fallen on.
Yeah.
In that game.
But McDonald, I thought he only played 8 snaps last week against the Giants, but
Yep.
watching the All-22, I thought, you know what? It's only 8 snaps, but I think that's the best he's looked. Um,
Yeah,
and I was
that's
talking
what
about it in
Dom
the
said to
forums
me
with
as well.
somebody. Yeah, I was talking to someone in the Jet Nation forums, and I said, I agreed. I said, I think he might be close to a breakout. Like, we might see a big game from him. And if they
Yep.
can get a lead one day, maybe he will. But until that happens, Aaron gets throttled with this O-line. Well, first of all, anyone gets throttled with this O-line. However, I would expect him to get less throttled because sort of the one of the things that makes Rodgers so great and always has is how ridiculously quickly he gets the ball out. So he's not
Yeah.
going to need the amount of time that Zach needs. And again, because he's Aaron Rodgers, and I mentioned this earlier, defenses aren't going to stack the box, and he's going to be able to. It's going to open up a little more running room. So this offense will be better with Aaron Rodgers, even if he's getting hit. But you do have to worry: do you want him getting re-injured behind this O line and then missing next year, which is less than optimal, I would say.
Yeah,
Let's see.
and it showed today because the Chargers, I'm pretty sure Brandon Staley is known for running more two high coverages, so like two split safeties in
Right.
the back end, and they were running a lot of single high. Like they don't respect the pass.
Yeah.
They don't care if Zach Wilson is going to drop back because especially when you have guys like Bosa and Mack, and I understand they're just names, and like especially Khalil Mack isn't really doing great outside of a couple games this year, but they're going to get home eventually, especially against guys like Billy Turner and Max Mitchell. So they're just
Yeah.
going to load the box every single game. And next week they're going to do it too with Max Crosby and the Raiders. So until Zach
Yeah.
actually like consistently does it or Hackett, stops going 5 wide on 3rd and 3, like people aren't going to respect the pass.
And just it feels like almost everything they run is right up the middle.
Yeah.
Um,
Every run
y-
is like, and I do the play charting every week. Like a lot of these runs are just duo, which is double teams with the guys trying to
yep.
get interior double teams for Brees Hall, and that's really it. They kind of gotten away from the outside zone schemes, and I don't know if that's just due to the injuries or who they have up front.
I
Maybe
know
Pete
that
Carter
was part of
doesn't
the
run
reason
the
we were so
zone.
excited about Tipman. We're like, oh, as much as they love to run outside, here's a guy who has the ability to get outside in a hurry and he blows people up like he's going to open up running lanes. And
Yep.
it's not a thing. They don't do it.
Nope. And screen game looked weak again today. Every time they try to screen, I mean, kudos to Zach for at least being able to dirt the ball on screens this season, but they just look bad when they try to set up for a screen pass. And he missed the one to Dalvin Cook. Who knows what it would have been? My question to you though
I couldn't.
is,
They didn't show the replay on that. I didn't know if that was a catchable ball. Like Wilson's reaction looked kind of like he was frustrated, like he thought it was catchable, and Cook did
yeah,
kind of like put his hands up, like oh, like damn, like it was catchable. And
yeah,
I
it looked
think they
like it
may
hit
have
his
shown a replay, but it was a
fingertips.
really bad angle, and you couldn't tell if it touched his hand or not. And I watched it, I'm like, I think that was a catchable ball.
Yeah, the stadium looked like he got his fingertips on it, but it was a little bit outside his frame.
Yeah, yeah,
But
but yes, folks saying in here JSN should have been the pick. Highlander, if you were watching Dylan and I during the draft, we were literally saying JSN, JSN,
screaming
JSN
it.
right before the pick. I actually wrote an article, and I rarely do this. Like I cover guys that I think would make sense, or the guys that but I did an article saying like Jackson Smith and Jigba is the no brainer pick for the Jets. Like he has to be the guy. Um,
Exactly.
and and now they're finally starting to work him in Seattle a little bit. He's getting about 50 yards a game. He's the third receiver. He had touchdowns 2 of the last 3 games. Really just a bad move. Let's see. It's not just a Zach Wilson issue. And you're right. That's the thing, Highlander Prime. And it's Robert Saleh. And the thing is, I understand Robert Saleh is still in a place where he will go out of his way to protect Zach Wilson. I get that. But he's not wrong when he says everyone was bad. You gave up 8
Yeah.
sacks. You averaged 3 yards a carry. You had again. I gotta start counting the drops as the game unfolds because
Yeah,
every
because
week I
PFF
just say
doesn't do
5
it good.
plus. But it's what's that?
PFF doesn't count it good. Last week they only had 2, and I had Lazard had 3 on his
Yeah,
own.
I looked at them a couple weeks ago. I looked at their drop numbers, and they had Lazard down for 4. And I'm like, I know he had 2, and they didn't have any games where he had 2, and I know he had a game where he had 2. So it's
Yep.
like PFF isn't keeping up with the drops.
No, I
Um,
think they're calling it like a contested catch drop instead of an actual drop. But
yeah,
I mean,
and he had a
if it
couple of
hits your
those too
hands
today.
like
He has
that,
some contested balls that he dropped, which that I can live with. Like you're fighting another dude for the ball, fine. But
Right.
the
I
but
I
the
did have
one the one where he didn't fight for it, the one that fell right in his hands and he let it come to him and the DB swatted it away, like, go up and get it, and that's a catch.
yes, exactly.
And that
I
was a
did
d
have a
that was a if I'm not mistaken, that was like a 25, 30-yard ball. Like, that's a big
yep,
play. And
yep.
you didn't
And
fight
he
for it, you let the guy knock it away,
and he looked
and,
for the flag instead of trying to anticipate and draw the flag on his own. I mean, I feel like good wide receivers, they if they see that the ball is underthrown, they come back to a point where they get face guarded by the DB and it's PI every time. So
yeah, and I feel like the Jets for years haven't had receivers who fight. Garrett Wilson, you see it a little bit from him. He had a couple. I mean, he had one that got out that I thought was catchable, but I think the DB was able to get his fingertips on Garrett's forearm and push his arms apart as he was pulling it in. But of course, he had the fumble,
mhm,
costly fumble as the Jets were moving the ball. So everybody was ugly today. Everybody was.
yeah,
So
my
it's not just Zach. Like I said, the point I've made is that Zach has improved, but he is nowhere good enough to overcome 10 plus penalties, 7, 8 drops, and stuff like that. He's just not that guy.
yeah.
There aren't
I
many guys like that, and Zach Wilson certainly isn't one of them. Dylan,
I
thanks for
had a
joining us. I'm gonna log off now and call it a day. Um,
cool, no,
are
not a
you with us
problem.
Wednesday night?
Yeah, I should be with you guys Wednesday night, 7 o'clock, right?
Yeah, that's the plan. I'll let you know if anything changes. Thanks for calling in, Dylan. We
Perfect.
appreciate it. That's Dylan Terman on his way home from the game from this embarrassing loss that really is something the Jets have to clean up. They've got to get better than what they've been, and who knows who knows where they go from here. They got to get some guys healthy. Again, Dwayne Brown, as bad as he's been, as I said, Brown and Becton is a lot better than Becton and Hunter. Um, or sorry, Turner. I call him Hunter all the time in my head while I'm watching him. Uh, I think, and every time he gets beat, I'm like, damn it, Wayne Hunter. I constantly catch myself calling Billy Turner Hunter, because I confuse him with him because they are very similar players. That'll do it for this one. Let's see. Play calling seems they're setting Zach up to fail. Listen, I won't say it's for ticket sales. I think Hackett's just not good. His dad wasn't good. He's not good. Um, Brown needs to earn snaps. Brown has earned snaps. He's better than Turner. That's it. And he's getting once he's healthy, he's playing. Sal and Douglas like to make draft discoveries. It's largely why they went for a raw project like Zach Wilson. No, Zach was consensus number 2 quarterback in the class. Uh, and again, the McDonald pick was baffling. It's not. I mean, if you look at McDonald's previous year in college, if Iowa State hadn't moved him inside, he probably would have been a top 10 pick. Like he's that good, and I think he'll be that good. And I think at the end of his career, people are going to be very happy the Jets made that pick. But my point is, the pick doesn't make sense for a win now team. It should have been a guy who's going to play now because you're trying to win now. Um, Even though I think, like I said, I said I thought he might break out. He might have a breakout game coming. He had a half a sack today, the forced fumble. I think as the season goes on, as he sees increased snaps, if they can get a damn lead, I think he'll do all right. Highlander Prime, yes. Good night to you. Good night to everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for checking us out. Sorry, it was a stinker for the Jets. Oakland up next. Sorry, Oakland. Las Vegas up next. We'll see how that. Listen, this defense against the rookie quarterback. Come on now, like you are shutting down. You just held Herbert to 160 yards on off, or I think the Chargers had 190 total, something like that. Rookie quarterback. Come on now, like get the job done. Get it done. I'd expect to see Aaron Rodgers there to meet with Devontae Adams and have some maybe go out for dinner and talk about maybe playing together again next year. Who knows? LH, thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Thanks for watching. Thanks everyone for watching. JetNation.com. Check it out. Most active Jets message board on the web. We will be back Wednesday night with more. I'll probably drop in tomorrow morning and do another one after I've rewatched the game. Not looking forward to that. Have a good one, Jets fans. I'm out for now.